"We're not your bank anymore," Mom snapped, her voice sharp with smugness. At first, I thought she was joking. She stood by the kitchen counter with her arms crossed, eyes fixed on me like I'd just committed some kind of crime. Dad didn't say a word, just sat there with that expression that told me everything had already been discussed without me. The air felt thick, like even the walls were listening. I had only asked to borrow a small amount, nothing crazy, nothing I hadn't asked before. But their tone, their faces, it was different this time. It wasn't about the money. It was something deeper. You ever feel like the ground shifts under you and no one warns you? That's exactly how it felt. One minute, I was the kid who could count on home to be a safety net. The next, it was like every favor, every dollar, every ride had racked up some invisible debt I didn't know I owed. Mom tapped her nails on the counter and gave this cold little smile, like she'd been rehearsing that line. I could feel the tension simmering beneath whatever calm they were pretending to have. Dad finally looked up, but not at me more, like through me. It wasn't anger, it was something worse. Disappointment, maybe, or exhaustion. The kind of look that tells you you've crossed a boundary you can't see. And now you're supposed to act like you knew it was there all along. I tried to explain. To remind them I was doing my best, that things hadn't exactly been easy for me lately. But before I could even finish, Mom cut me off with a wave of her hand. "We're done cleaning up after you," she added, quieter this time, but somehow louder than anything I'd ever heard from her. My stomach dropped. It didn't sound like a warning, it sounded like a verdict. And then, just minutes later, everything shifted again, faster than I could process. Something happened that none of us saw coming, and whatever I thought this conversation was about completely changed in an instant. I didn't even have time to react before Mom's phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen and her face changed just for a second. It wasn't anger anymore. It was something closer to concern, maybe fear, but she hid it fast. Dad stood up slowly, like he was bracing for something, and asked if everything was okay. She didn't answer. She just picked up the phone and walked into the hallway, shutting the door behind her. The silence she left behind felt heavier than the argument. I stayed there, not sure if I should leave or wait. Dad rubbed his temples like he'd been carrying this weight for months. I wondered if this was really about me asking for money, or if something bigger had been building up in the background. Bills, maybe. Secrets. Things they didn't want to talk about. I thought about the last few weeks, Mom whispering on the phone late at night. Dad checking the mailbox before anyone else could, the way they kept turning off lights earlier than usual. It was small stuff, but suddenly it didn't feel small. When Mom came back, she didn't look at me. She just told Dad it's starting, like they'd been expecting this moment. My chest tightened because I had no idea what she meant, but they clearly did. Dad asked if they had any time left, and she shook her head. That's when I realized their decision about me wasn't just frustration, it was preparation. I wanted to ask what was going on, but something in their faces told me I wouldn't get a straight answer. Instead, Mom started gathering papers from the drawer by the fridge. Bank statements, envelopes, documents I'd never seen before. Dad checked the front window like he was expecting someone to show up. I kept waiting for one of them to explain, but nothing came. Whatever was happening didn't start with me. And it definitely wasn't ending tonight. Dad finally broke the quiet by asking me to go to my room for a minute. His voice was calm, but it didn't match the storm I could see in his eyes. I wanted to argue, but something told me not to push. I stepped into the hallway, but I didn't go far. Their voices were low, but I could catch pieces words like deadline, agreement, and they're moving faster than we thought. Mom kept mentioning someone named Harper. Like this person was connected to everything they were suddenly afraid of. I leaned against the wall, trying to make sense of it. Just days ago, everything felt normal enough for us. I had been focused on finding part-time work, catching up on bills I'd fallen behind on, thinking my parents were just frustrated with me like any parents would be. But now it sounded like they were hiding from something. Financial trouble? Some kind of loan? Debt collectors? The word bank kept echoing in my head, suddenly with a different meaning than the one they'd thrown at me earlier. Then there was something else, my older sister, Claire. She moved out years ago after a fight none of us fully talked about. She hadn't called in months, and every time someone mentioned her, Mom shut it down. But tonight, Dad asked if they should try reaching her, and Mom snapped that Claire made her choice. That told me whatever this was, it ran deeper than money or disappointment. It sounded like history trying to catch up with them. I remembered being younger and overhearing late-night arguments about a loan they co-signed for someone. Back then, I assumed it was about a friend or a relative who disappeared. Now it felt connected. Maybe Harper was part of that old mess. Maybe Claire was too. I stepped closer to the kitchen doorway, careful not to make noise. Mom was stuffing the papers into a folder and telling Dad they needed to leave things clean if anyone showed up tomorrow. He asked what they were going to tell me, and she said, "Nothing yet. Not until we know how bad it is." The worst part was realizing they weren't shutting me out to punish me, they were shutting me out to protect themselves from something I didn't even know existed. I was about to step away from the doorway when headlights swept across the front windows. Dad froze, his hand still holding the edge of the curtain. Mom stiffened, like she'd been expecting this, but hoped it wouldn't happen tonight. She whispered, "It's too early," and Dad didn't argue. He just motioned for the lights to be turned off. The room fell into dim shadows, and I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I backed up into the hallway and pressed myself against the wall, hoping whoever was outside couldn't see movement through the windows. The car engine cut off, and for a few seconds, nothing happened. No doors opened, no voices, just silence. The kind that feels like it's holding its breath. Dad whispered something to Mom about the back door and checking the folder, and she glanced toward the hallway toward me but didn't say a word. I wasn't sure if she saw me or pretended not to. She tucked the folder into a tote bag and nudged it under the dining chair like she'd done it before. Then a knock hit the front door. Not loud, not frantic, too calm to be casual. Dad didn't move right away. Mom gripped the counter like her fingers were keeping her upright. The knock came again, slower this time. Like whoever was out there wasn't going anywhere. My mind raced with every question I didn't have answers to. Was it someone they owed money to? Someone connected to Harper? Or something worse that had nothing to do with me but was about to drag me into it anyway? Dad finally walked toward the door, but he didn't open it. He just stood there, listening. Then a voice from the other side said his full name, no hesitation. Not a neighbor, not a friend. Someone who knew exactly who they came for. Mom reached for her phone, hands shaking just enough to notice. She didn't dial anyone. She just held it like a lifeline, staring at the door. Another voice joined the first, lower, harder to make out. They weren't asking, they were waiting. Dad glanced at Mom, then at the hallway where I stood hidden. His jaw tightened. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Whatever was happening tonight had been chasing them for a long time. And now it had finally caught up, and I was still on the wrong side of the truth. Dad didn't open the door right away. He spoke through it, voice low but controlled, asking what they wanted. The person outside didn't answer the question. Instead, they said, "You're out of extensions. We warned you this would happen." The words sent a chill through me, even though I still didn't know what they meant. Mom closed her eyes like she'd been dreading that exact sentence. Before Dad could respond, another set of headlights flashed across the driveway. A different car pulled up faster, stopping just a few feet behind the first. Doors opened this time. More than one. I heard footsteps on the gravel, 3, maybe 4 people. None of them sounded hesitant. Then something I never expected. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced down and froze when I saw the name, Claire. I hadn't heard from her in forever, and now she was calling in the middle of this? I slipped into my room and answered in a harsh whisper. Before I could say anything, she cut in, "Don't let them open the door. I'm almost there. You need to listen to me." Her tone wasn't angry, was urgent, like she'd been running toward this moment for miles. I asked her what was going on, but she didn't give me time. She said Mom and Dad had kept things from me to protect me, but the people outside didn't care who got caught in the middle. I could hear wind in the background, maybe traffic. She was close, really close. Then she said a name I hadn't heard before, almost under her breath, like she hated giving it power. "Harper's not who you think," she whispered. "And they're not just here for them. They're here for you, too." My chest tightened. I told her there were 2 cars now, more people than we thought. She didn't react with surprise. She just said, "I know. They brought back up because they think Dad hid something."